And we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Debra Eckerling. I'm the author of Your Goal Guide and founder of the Deb Method. And we're here for another edition of Goal Chat Live. And I'm so excited about this topic because today we're talking about persistence. We had such an amazing goal chat last night talking about persistence because everybody has an opinion on what it takes to keep moving forward. And I have like the poster woman for persistence right here. So my guest today is Diana Giovinazzo. She's the author of The Woman in Red, which was just released. Yay, congratulations.
Thank you.
And Diana is also the president of the LA chapter of the Women's National Book Association. And we were chatting with her book coming out, and I'm like, you have to be a guest. And she told me this story, and this is how the topic came up. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself a little bit more, and then we're going to just have a wonderful, fun conversation about persistence, because you and I both know things don't necessarily happen in your own time. You need this trait.
Yes, persistence is necessary, even just to try to make it in its own time. So in addition to writing this book and being the president of the Women's National Book Association for the LA chapter, because I simply just don't have enough on my plate, I'm also a podcast co-host. My podcast is Wine, Women, and Words, and it's a weekly podcast where we interview authors. And yeah, outside of that, that's pretty much everything else. That's about me.
Wonderful.
I play with those things.
Well, okay, so I don't want to bury the lead, but why don't you tell, because let's just get right to it.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about your book and sort of why the topic of persistence was a light bulb when you were telling me this story?
Well, The Woman in Red is a story of Anita Garibaldi. She was this fierce woman in history. Her husband was Giuseppe Garibaldi, who united Italy, made it pretty much the country that it is today. And her story is a lot about persistence, where she was raised as a gaucho in southern Brazil. She fought with her husband in the Ragamuffin War in southern Brazil and the Uruguayan Civil War, and again during the beginning of the Italian unification. And so that's pretty much so much of what she is. And then in addition to that, with persistence, it was just trying to get an agent and get the book published is an act of persistence in and of itself.
Yes. Well, and we do have some non-authors who, it's writers, creatives, and entrepreneurs is basically the audience of Goal Chat. But I think everybody can relate to, what is the value of persistence? Well, things don't happen in our time. They happen the way it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, it's, you kind of go back to, I'm a Hamilton fan, and there's that song, Wait for It. And you're just going to wait for it to happen. And you can't really wait for things to just happen, for an agent just to fall in your lap, for an opportunity just to fall in your lap, for a business opportunity to just fall right there in your lap. You have to work for it and build for it. And I feel like when it comes to, at least speaking from a writer's perspective, that when it came to getting an agent, because that's usually the first step if you want to go traditional publishing, is to, get that agent, is to really, you have to work for it. You have to set those goals, and you have to really be persistent about what you're doing. And I don't know, shall I go into my method of my persistence and what I did?
Yeah, I love this one. Yeah, please.
So when it came time to sit down and start pitching agents, you got to have your query letter, you've got to have your synopsis, and then they like to have, those chapters, your sample chapters, some like 50 pages, some like the first 3 chapters. It varies upon who you're pitching to. And so every week, every Sunday, I would sit down and I would pitch 5 agents. And you don't want to do a huge batch. You don't want to be like, okay, today I'm going to sit down and I'm going to pitch 50 agents. And what's going to happen if they come back, or you need to make tweaks to your query letter and make tweaks to the book based on what they say. And then, you can't necessarily, it's rude to pitch the same agent twice at one time. After you pitch them once, you have to wait maybe a year or 2. It's not really seen as, the right thing to do. So you don't want to make those kinds of mistakes. So I did every week 5 agents. Sometimes I hear back from them. Sometimes you just don't. Sometimes it takes months for an agent to get back to you because they're such busy people. Right. And so I kept doing that. And, I took the time to, okay, this was the agency. These are the people that I want to hit. It gave me time to research them. Even during the week, I'd research agents and see what they're about and, all the little things to make sure that they were the right agents for me, or at least what I thought were the right agents for me. And so I had a goal. I set myself a goal that when I started pitching agents, I was going to pitch to 100 agents. Wow. If 100 agents told me no, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look at another option for getting this book published, because I was like, one way or another, this book is getting published. I don't care if I have to self-publish and stand on a street corner and hand the books out to people. I'm going to get this book published. And so, yeah, I did that. I worked, I started pitching in March of 2018 and, 5 a week. And then in January of 2019, I was getting pretty damn close to that 100 mark. Not gonna lie, I was getting really close, and I was starting to sweat it. Like, okay, maybe it's time for me to start looking now to, prep and research. And I had gotten an agent who came back to me who said they wanted the full manuscript. And it was like the first time I had somebody want the full manuscript.
Wow.
And yeah, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is going to be my agent. This is going to be amazing. This is going to happen. I'm going to get this agent. And they came back to me maybe about a week or two later going, yeah, sorry, not for me. And I was just devastated. I was just like swearing devastated. I'm trying to watch my mouth in these interviews and not like fully swear, because I can't have a mouth of a sailor if given the opportunity. So I'm trying to like censor myself when I was that devastated. But that day I was like, you know what? I'm going to grab a bottle of wine and I'm going to pitch 3 more agents. It was a Monday and I was like, just 3 agents. It's all I need is just 3 agents. Just pitch them. I'll go to bed and, pick up again on Sunday. But 3 agents. That's what I'm going to do. And so I grabbed a bottle of wine and a crazy straw, completely skipping the glass. And yeah, I pitched 3 agents. One of them was an agent that I had my eye on for a while who was not open to pitches. And I pitched her. And the next morning at like 7 a.m., before I was getting ready to go to work, she came back and she was like, can you send me your full manuscript? And I was like, sure. And I sent it to her. And within a week later, Johanna Castillo was my agent. So, yeah, so it was a matter of paying it off. And she was agent number 89. It was like 88 or 89 that I had pitched.
Whoa. I mean, that's like, it's insane. Okay, so this is my question. 100 is a great number because usually I say, if you brainstorm, I usually say at least 20, and then I kind of trick you into doing 50. And then if you need to keep brainstorming more, we'll get to 100. But how did you say that's my magic number? Because that's plenty.
That was with my husband and I. My husband and I were discussing it, and he was really great cheerleader through all of it, because it was hard. It was really hard. It was emotionally hard, where you had those days where it felt like there was this radar going off somewhere, going, oh, Diana's having a bad day. Let's go ahead and send all of our rejections at once. And I would get like 3 or 4 rejections in one day, and I was like, okay, I get it. Okay. So
thanks, universe.
Yeah, exactly. And so when he and I were talking, and he's like, he was really, you should go ahead and do traditional. You should do this. And I was like, all right, let's look at it this way. Let's do 100. I think 100 is a good number. And the 100 also counts for the fact that you're not going to, it's rare, like super, super rare, that you send out one pitch and within that first pitch, you're going to get somebody back, get an agent back. It's really rare. It doesn't happen every day. And, I read other authors who are like, when you're somebody wrote an article once where they're like, when you're at 40 pitches, you're just getting started with your rejections. So I wanted to have this nice, thorough vetting with the agents to say, okay, at 100, there's a problem with my book. There's something I need to reassess. What is it that I need to reassess? What is it that I need to do to change this up?
Well, and the really good point that you made, and you made this earlier as well, is that you were constantly tweaking your pitches, your queries. And that's one thing that I always hear is you spend all this time writing a book. Why wouldn't you spend all this time finding the right agent, finding the right publisher, writing the right query? Because some people just like, I don't know who these people are, but they just like breeze through. Oh, well, it's all there. I'm just gonna write this little bit, and that's fine. You know, I could write a 5-minute pitch for something I spent like 5 months writing. No. Yeah. You need to put in the time, and I think the 5 a week is great, because usually I tell people, you know, you know me, so you know this. I always say, you know, do things in 15-minute increments. If you need to set a goal, do 3 a week, 5 a week, something that's reasonable that you're actually going to do, because that's how you set yourself up for success. And I kind of love how it was that the 3 or 4 that you sent, because you're like, okay, this sucks, but I'm going to send 3 more. And that's when you got the right one. I think that's just fantastic.
I know, mentally I couldn't do 5. I knew at that point, after I got that rejection, mentally I could not handle 5. But I was like, you know what? Let's just do 3. I can get 3. I know I can get 3 out there. I know I can get that out there. So let's go ahead and do the 3. Let's do what I can reasonably mentally do, and to get me back on that horse. And then once I'm back on that horse, then let's go ahead and look at, you know, doing the 5 next time.
And it worked.
Yes, I got my dream agent and my dream agency with an amazing publisher. So it happens. It can come true.
So how long after you got the agent before the book was sold? And you're like writing the 3rd one. So we really need to like say, you know, all the time, the effort, the hard work. It's like you didn't just sell 1 book. You sold the series.
I sold 2 books, technically. I'm working on the 3rd. The 3rd one's not sold yet, but I'm working. My 2nd one is sold. So yeah, my sale. So it was there's that Macklemore song, 10,000 Hours. That was one of my, you know, I love music, and music helps put me in the mood for things. And that was one of the songs that I would go to when things got hard, that 10,000 Hours song. And there's a line in it where it's like, I felt like I got signed the day I got an agent. And there was part of me that was like, I want that to be me. And that kind of helped it the way it happened with me. That part is the part that's rare, where usually after you get your agent, it can take upwards of like maybe a year to get your book sold to an editor at a publishing house. I signed with my agent in late January, roughly, or mid to late January, and I had my publisher by March. So that's not usual. That doesn't normally happen. So that's when things really started to roll. It was that persistence of getting that agent, and then all of a sudden, boom, things just broke open.
And it could happen. And you just don't know. And I think, you know, going back to the question of why is perseverance so important, it's sort of like, it's like that cartoon where you see the guy digging. Do you know which one I'm talking about? This guy is digging a hole under this, like a mine or something. And he's like, you can't see, or he can't see it, but you can, because it's a cartoon. And you see he's like 6 inches away from breaking through, and it's like, do you keep going, or is that when you turn back? You just don't know when it's the thing that's going to make all the difference. So you kind of have to be like, it's going to happen, and you have to believe it's going to happen, because if you don't, you're not going to start this in the first place.
And so it's to kind of also, while you're being persistent about making things happen, you also have to kind of be consistent about or think about what can also be happening in the background while you're trying to do your thing. There's other things going into play that, not to get too spiritual on things, but, my agent had to come into Ryder's house and start being open for, new queries. My publisher, my editor at Grand Central, she didn't come into Grand Central as an editor and VP until March of 2018. So things had to start coming into play and things had to start working on that. So sometimes, even though you're trying to make things happen and force things to happen, you also have to be able to move, let things happen in their own way too, while you're still pushing. There's that great saying, God doesn't help those who can't help themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to be able to help yourself. You have to be able to move things along for yourself and not just sit and wait back for them to happen.
Right. It's the whole law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
You put your work out there, but you also have to put your mind and your spirit out there,
mm-hmm.
and be open to the different places that your journey takes you.
Yeah.
Because you don't know. And I really should add, because, I love mango. I have like the opposite of your story, because my agent, and this never happens, my agent found me because somebody who was in my live group sat next to him at an event, mentioned my group. We had a conversation. He said, send me your book proposal. So I wrote my book proposal. But I had actually met him like 8 years before, because he spoke at an event I attended in the Valley, and I never go to the Valley. So it was one of those, you meet people at a certain time, mm-hmm. and then you re-meet them. So, mm-hmm. and mine was in the spring of 2018, and by 2019, thankfully, my book proposal found its way to Brenda Knight at Mango, and here I am.
Yeah.
So, it's patience, mm-hmm. and it's excitement, because I think if you love your project, that's the other thing that's going to keep you persistent. Mm-hmm. It needs to get out in the world. Mm-hmm. It needs to see the light of day. So that also helps, because mm-hmm. you know that you want this, right?
You have something about you. You've got something good. You have a story that needs to be told some way, in some shape or form. So you're going to do what's necessary to make that happen. You've got to make that happen. It's investing in yourself. We think mm-hmm. we don't think twice about investing in other companies or investing in, other people. But sometimes you got to sit back and invest in yourself and do what you think is what's going to be right for you and for what you want to do with your life.
I could not agree with you more. So we have some questions. So we're going to go a little out of order. Christina, hi Christina, wants to know, how do you know when you need to persevere and when you should go back to the drawing board and revise your work, choose a different approach?
I would say I'm very much a hardhead when it comes to this. When it came to like the woman in red, when I had to go back and revise like my query letter, you kind of you get a feel for it. You get so many people where I think like out of like 2 or 3 weeks of not getting any response or not getting any, if I did get feedback, it was I went back and I tweaked things. Well, if this isn't working, well, let's try this angle on the query letter. Let's try that. So you kind of start to get a feel for those things. And it's something that really, you have to trust your gut and you have to start listening to your gut. I think so many of us, especially women, when you look at it, we're trained not to listen to our intuition and not to listen to our gut, but you've got to follow your gut on these things where it's like, I should really try this way. I should really try to do it this way. Or try this angle. You have to be open to that and do that. And I think that's the best way for it. And sometimes with the book, for me, it was that 100, you had that deadline where I had that deadline. Okay, at 100, I need to evaluate, is there something wrong with the book or is there something wrong with the agents that I'm hitting? Because at that point, I felt like if I hit 100 agents, I hit a lot of them. So, or most of them. And at least in my mind, guys, I could be wrong. I'm sure there's more than 100 agents out there who would want to start fiction. But I think at that point, I was like, okay, this is now when I readjust. This is when I can readjust the book or readjust how I get this book published. So that's, having those big mindsets, I think, really help too.
Okay, and I just want to add one thing for Christina on this. Sometimes, and again, we talked about not yet a lot, and I'm sure we will continue to.
Yes.
Sometimes it's not a matter of abandoning the project. Maybe it's just putting it aside for a month or two, and then reapproaching it with fresh eyes. But if there's something that you love that you want to get out there, there's always a way. And sometimes taking that time will help you find a better, different, more effective way.
And sometimes it's a way when it comes to with books as well, where so in all honesty, there are, not every book that we write gets sold. That's the reality of the business. So in between my first book and my second book, I had another book that I had finished. I was halfway through the second draft, and it just wasn't going to sell. We just knew it wasn't going to sell. I sent it to my agent and wasn't quite right for the market right now. So, and I had all this research and stuff. So I stepped back and was like, okay, well, this is the one that's not gonna sell. And I was very honest with her too. I don't think she was quite used to that with me, where I was just like, is it gonna sell? Is this gonna be a good thing? And she was like, no, in my professional opinion, I don't think it is. So I was like, okay, well, I put that project in the back burner. I haven't completely said no to it. And I haven't said this is never going to happen. I have to maybe sit back and look at a different angle. Sometimes you have to do that and then reassess and look at it again. So sometimes that happens too, where, maybe this isn't working out and you're banging your head so hard, you need to sit back and look at another angle of that.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to click on Andrea, who's another one of our regulars. If it's something you believe in, especially benefit to the greater good, you need to be persistent. Don't give up on something because it's hard.
Absolutely.
Completely agree.
I feel like the harder it is, the harder you have to fight for something, the more rewarding it's going to be.
Well, sometimes it's nice when things come easy, but what is
don't get me wrong. Yeah.
What is easy, right?
Yeah. Life's not supposed to be easy. Let's go back and quote Princess Bride on this one here. Life's not easy. They're trying to tell you it is. They're trying to sell you something. That's the reality here.
Yes, and it goes back to how do you remain persistent? It's if something in your heart needs to be out there, that drives you.
Mm-hmm.
If you have your purpose, if you have your mission, I kind of think right? Don't you know?
You have that feeling, yeah.
And so we know when persistence has paid off for you in regards to this. Do you have another really good persistent story?
Oh gosh, my whole life. let's take your pick. I mean, there was writing itself. So for me, being a writer, I wanted to be a writer from the time I was a kid, for as long as I can remember. My first memory is storytelling. And I really wanted to do that. And so I don't think we actually talked about this story before. When I was in my mid-20s, mind you, this young thing that I was at the time, we were living in Texas. My husband was stationed at Fort Hood, and I had this opportunity where, okay, I could stay home and I could be a writer now. I can do this. I can try this. I can try being a writer, and I can do it. And I failed. I failed miserably. I was writing, they tell you guys, start with short stories and then move on to novels. And the novel that I was trying was terrible. I will not even tell you the premise of it. It was bad. And it just wasn't working. And I was spinning my wheels. Nothing was happening. And I felt like a failure. I even still looking back at that time, even though I was so young, I felt like a complete and total failure for not getting anything going. And we were in Texas for about 3.5 years. And that whole time I felt like a failure, and it really took a toll on me mentally. And so we moved back to California, and the economy wasn't great. We moved back in 2008 when everything was falling apart. And I remember sitting and looking at my husband. I was like, I'm not going to be able to make it as a writer. It's not going to happen. And we need to start doing something to make money. And that's when I decided I was going to go and get my paralegal certificate and become a paralegal. And I was working at a pseudo travel agency, and I was like, I'm not going to be a writer. This isn't going to happen for me. This isn't my thing. I gave up writing completely. I was just going to be a reader.
I'm so sad.
Yeah, this is my late 20s by this point. Just about 30. This isn't for me. This isn't going to happen for me. And Michelle, my co-host for the podcast, Wine, Women, and Words, she and I started to become friends at this point, and her and I were big readers. And when we were supposed to be working at our job, we would trade books back and forth over our cubicle, and we would be reading our books. Like, I could finish. I kid you not, guys. I could start a book at 8 a.m., and I've done this. Michelle can attest to it. She'd hand me a book at 8 a.m., and by 5 p.m., when it was time to go home, I handed her back the book. It was finished. I could do that with books. I'm a fast reader. And so we were doing that, and there was this anthology short story contest that was starting up, and Michelle was like, oh, we should enter. And I was like, no, I'm not going to enter. I'm not a writer. And she was like, no, let's just do it for fun. Just the two of us. Let's just trade stories back and forth, just to each other. You don't have to submit it. Just write a story and we'll do it. And so I wrote this short story, and I actually liked the short story. I thought it was really cute. It was like this dystopian kind of world. And she read it, and she was like, oh my God, that's really good. Why aren't you writing? And I told her what happened, and I'm like, I'm not a writer. This isn't for me. This isn't going to happen for me. And she was just like, well, that's bullshit. Sometimes you need a friend to go, well, that's just bullshit. And so this is back when I think Twitter was really just starting to take off. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm dating myself already. And she would find these articles about writing and about how you need to find time to write. And because every excuse you can imagine, I would tell her. And she would go find these articles based on the said excuses. And then she would send it to me via Twitter, and she would tag the author of the article. And the author would be like, yeah, Diana, why aren't you writing? So things like this, she would do stuff like that to me all the time. And so finally I was like, well, okay, maybe I should start writing again. And I started off small. I started off with a blog, doing book reviews and other little things. And then I got back into NaNoWriMo and started doing that again and started writing again. And then I started a fantasy novel, which was fun, but again, will never see the light of day because everybody's got to have a practice novel. Even if you start, every author has a practice novel that will
I write nonfiction, but even I have a practice novel.
Yes, everybody's got to have a practice novel. You've got to have that one practice novel that kind of gives you an idea of where you are in it that's like not going to happen. And I ended up dropping that practice novel for The Woman in Red. And then that's how things ended up going. But yeah, that was my, persistence of giving up and saying, screw it, I'm not going to be a writer, to now me a couple months away from 40 having a book published and having that live stream accomplished.
Well, first of all, I'm going to see your practice novel. I also have a practice screenplay. Because before I moved to LA, I took a screenwriting course. I was really excited. I heard Gary Marshall speak back when I lived in Chicago, and he was so inspiring. I'm like, okay, this is totally my thing. Mm-hmm. And then I got my freelance writing break maybe a week after I finished my practice screenplay, and that just, my love of nonfiction, I could go on and on and on, but it was just, that was the fit for me. Sometimes you find your fits. Mm-hmm. Frequently, you find what fits you when you're doing something else, because it's sort of like, and we had David King, who's a garden master, on, and there's a great analogy to, you plant the garden and you have to let it grow without tearing it up. Sometimes you need to let things sit and work on something else, and then you see what blossoms. You see where your green thumb shows itself. Mm-hmm. Of course, I'm not very good with the green thumb, but
you should see my victory garden right now, or lack thereof. We went away for the weekend and came back and it was all brown. So yeah.
So you're
have your green thumb shows up in other ways.
Yeah, exactly. But I think one of the, and I love your persistence story. It's sort of like writing haunted you, or your best friend did, or whatever, until it was like, okay, come on, wake up. This is your thing. It just needed to like have a little time out so you could really blossom as a writer you were meant to be.
Exactly.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, and I like to think that it's the writing haunted me, and it used other people to help with the haunting too.
And this I talk about like every single time I do one of my goal setting workshops. I say, networking. You need to find your people. Because your people are the ones who are going to encourage you. You know, I've got, and if you're watching and you're not in my Right On group for goal setting and accountability, I will put the link in the comments. Please join. And it really is all about sharing your wins and what you're up to, because you never know if you're open to making connections. You never know where those are going to be. And it might be.
Yeah, Women's National Book Association. Sorry to cut you off there, but that was in December. I went to a writers. We did a workshop on pitches and queries, and how to do a proper pitch class. And after that, I reworked my pitch for my book, and that's when I started to get the traction. That's when I started to get the agents, was after that class, after doing that. And so having, the networking associations like WNBA really helps helps you find your people. That's the other big thing, is where to find your people. And that's a great place to, I think, to start finding your people. That's why, it helped me immensely, and why I'm now president. Not just a member, I'm president.
Right. And so I'm involved because Brenda Knight's the recent president of the San Francisco chapter. And she got me involved, and I'm like, well, that's silly. I should be involved in LA. And that's how we met.
Yes.
So you have to be open to the different opportunities around you and the different people, because this is your tribe. Nothing, especially now, nothing is really easy. I mean, we're living in very, very strange times. Can I understate? Can I make that enough of an understatement? But because we also live in this technological age, there are people everywhere. And that's like, can you imagine going through all this and not having connections electronically?
I couldn't. If we were going through this, thinking back to like the early 2000s, when things were just barely starting, where when my husband was downrange, the first time, I barely got to talk to him. It was emails back and forth periodically. And then the second time he went downrange, Facebook was a huge help, where we were able to chat on Facebook, where we got on Facebook and we talk with each other on Facebook while he was overseas. And that was really how we were able to connect, and having that connection while somebody was overseas was so important to me, and for us in a relationship, being in the military. And so now having that connection where we can do things like this, where I can talk with you, where I can Zoom with friends. Sometimes, we have this tendency for some of us, that socialization issue. I know for me, I have to be able to socialize with people. Right. I can stay home in my pajamas and not do anything, but I have to have that social interaction. And sometimes after a week or so, having all these Zoom meetings and Zoom stuff, I'm like, I'm just going to close everything off. I don't want to be around people anymore. You still have that. And so I don't feel like my life has changed all that much because of the pandemic, because I have online stuff.
Right. And if you need people, share you on the links for WNBA LA, and if you're not in LA, obviously the San Francisco chapter is awesome as well. And there's probably a chapter where you are. You just need to go to the main website. But the other good news that we should share is, if you're a member of one WNBA group, you can see what the others are doing, or and there's always events, or look to your bookstore. A lot of bookstores, or your Chamber of Commerce, there are all sorts of ways to connect to, but you need to find your people, because that's what's going to not only push you to keep going and encourage you, but you also get to encourage other people, and that's a gift too. It's not just you benefit, but also by helping others, you benefit. Okay, so I'm gonna pose the last question, which is, what advice do you have for people who need to be more persistent?
I would say setting a goal and sticking to it. Just having that goal, having that, and your goals don't have to be really huge, that monumental goal of having, you know, I'm going to get published and it's going to get to this, you know, be huge. No, you have those little step-by-step goals. Having that goal and making that goal the gold standard, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term. You know, like having those, pitching those 100 agents, it was a matter of, okay, I can't do anything else. I can't give up on this because I said 100 agents, and I have to stick to this till I get up to 100 agents. And even having an accountability partner for it too is always good too. Where, you know, I had my husband when it was a very emotional year for 2018, very emotional. And don't worry, guys, he got rewarded. He did get a Disney annual pass once I got my first event. I got him that. I keep him supplied in Legos right now while Disney is closed. So I do things to help to keep him happy and thank him for this work, because it was very emotional for me. And so, as you know, a spouse of somebody, having them involved as well, so that you can talk about this and have that kind of springboard to the thing that you want to see you through. Where if I started getting down on myself and if I started saying, "Oh, I'm just going to give up and do it," he was like, "Oh, no, you're not. We agreed. This was our agreement. We're doing this, and you're going to wait until you get that 100 agent. You know, once you pitch that 101 agent, go ahead, do whatever you want, but you got to hit 100 agents." So having that, you know, whether it's your spouse or a family member or a friend, having that connection, that somebody who's going to hold your feet to the fire and saying, "Okay, we're doing this. This is what we're going to do. We're not letting go until it happens." Go ahead and do that. Where, you know, even where I think I had it with a friend where whoever, and I still owe her, by the way, no, where you had a goal, whoever got the most rejections, a friend and I did this, my critique partner and I, whoever got the most rejections before getting accepted by an agent, or whoever got accepted first, had to buy the other one dinner or had to do something for the other one. So at some point, because she's in New York, so at some point when we can get together, I'm picking up the tab when we go out to dinner. When you get having that kind of thing also is really helpful, just to kind of make it friendly like that, to just kind of make it, you know, that less grueling for yourself.
I love the gamification of goals is just the perfect way to think about it. And the other thing I'm just going to add is, you want wins. And if 100 is too much for you to think of a win, then maybe it's like you reward yourself every 20 with something. So, but one of the biggest things I think for persistence is, first of all, you have to know what you want. You need to know it in your gut. We were talking about this before, but also to see what I call Goaltopia, yourself living the life you want, doing the thing that you're meant to do. If you have your eye on that, and you know that it's not just probable, it's possible, or not just possible, it's probable. I just, Ann Curry and I spoke at the same event in New York. I think it was 2011, 2012. And it was for 140 conference, and every year it comes up as a memory because she says, you know, in the name, impossible is I'm possible. Things aren't just possible, they're probable. And if you have your eye on what you want and you do the steps to get there, it's going to happen, not in your time. It's not the time frame that you want it to happen. Yeah. But you just have to keep the P word, persistence, right?
And even like when I broke it down and did 5 agents a week, it helped at, you know, not doing it all at once. It was little by little. And after those 5 agents were pitched, I got to go do something fun for the rest of my Sunday.
Great. Reward. Win-win. Win. Yeah. Andrea just chimed in that my bestie and I did something like that. I'm still waiting for her to take me on a trip somewhere. Okay, well, that's awesome.
Yes.
And then I put this up before, but you were talking, so I'm going to put it up again. Sue Ann writes, persistence and writer feel synonymous to me. And I agree.
Yes.
And because writing is so subjective,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know who your words are going to speak to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, and it's a numbers game. It
Mm-hmm.
could be in the first 10, it could be in the first 90. You just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But the more opportunities you give yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and you and I are such an agreement, it's a gift to yourself.
Yes.
By putting your work out there.
Mm-hmm.
When you give yourself that gift, you don't know what's going to happen. And that's kind of exciting, right?
Yeah, it is. It's very exciting. Giving yourself the opportunity to see what the future is going to hold. It's great. We never stop to think about what it can be like for ourselves to do these things for ourselves. We always think about others, and we think about what others' needs are, what others' needs can be, what we can do for somebody else. But sometimes we got to sit down and be like, what can we do for ourselves? What opportunities can we give for ourselves? It's okay to be selfish sometimes, especially when it comes to your goals.
Absolutely. Your goals are your gift to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Say that all the time. And the time that you spend working towards your goals, and you said one of my favorite things to tell people you said early on, and I'm going to reiterate, is that you commit to other people. Mm-hmm. You have to make those same commitments to yourself, mm-hmm. because that's how you make the life you want happen.
Exactly.
Okay, so I like to end Goal Chat Live with some bit of a homework for those who are watching, whether you're live or the replay. So what sort of bonus goal should we give people, Diana?
Bonus goal, I would say set a number for yourself. I think if you're currently writing a book, I would say give yourself a daily word count number. It doesn't have to be high. It can be 500 words. It could be 1,000 words. It's up to you. If you are currently in the process of pitching for an agent, give yourself a goal for that. Give yourself a number. Pick that number and set a goal. And make.
I love it. No, that's perfect. No, I love it. Because give yourself a number. It could be pages. It could be word count. It could be number of outreaches. It could be number of networking events. Mm-hmm. Give yourself a number to reach every week, mm-hmm. for the next month or two, mm-hmm. and let us know how it goes.
Yes.
That sound good?
I think that sounds great. I think that's great homework.
Okay. Any final words of wisdom, thoughts that you want to leave people with? Oh, and also, where can people find you?
Okay. There's a couple things there. So if you want to find me, go to, I'm all over social media. Diana G Author is what I'm under. Because that last name is a mouthful. I understand that. So Diana G Author, that's where I'm on Twitter and Instagram, or DianaGiovinazzo.com is my website. And I gotta think for a moment about the last words of advice. I would say, you know what, let's go ahead and go back to quoting Macklemore. It's the 10,000 hours. Go ahead and listen to that, because it's 10,000 hours feels like 10,000 ants. 10,000 ants, they carry me. I think that in and of itself is the wisdom, the modern wisdom I shall impart on you for right now.
Okay, and I am going to leave with my favorite advice, which is just remember you can do it, because mm-hmm. that's the thing that's going to keep you going. If you know you can do it, then you're going to keep going. So we are telling you, well, Diana and I, you can do it. Just keep going, pick your number, and reach toward it every week, because you never know what's going to happen unless you persist in this marathon we call the life we want. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And everybody who's watching, listening, either live or on the replay, thank you so much. Please share your thoughts on persistence, share your stories, in the comments. And you can also go to thedebmethod.com/blog, where the recap will be up and the bonus goals for this and the previous broadcast. And if you want to learn more about me, I'm at the Deb Method everywhere and at Write On Online everywhere. And if you want to learn more about your goal guide, just go to yourgoalguidebook.com or check your favorite bookstore. Thanks again, Diana. You've been watching Goal Chat Live on Persistence. And if you're watching, you also gave this as a gift to yourself, so we appreciate it. Please join me every Sunday night for Goal Chat at 7 p.m. on Twitter. And then I will be back here again next Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific with another amazing guest. So have a great week, everyone. You can do it. And let us know your thoughts on persistence in the comments.